William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I welcome you to another Two Hats special of community events. Let's look in and see what's really happening.
Going to be out of here, so we want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're going to get started on time. Let me say thank each of you for coming out tonight to this community meeting, and we will have a couple of presentations. And so the first one will be from Mr. John Jenkins, who's the Assistant Director in the Park and Rec Department. But before we go there, we know that Fair Park is a subject that has garnered a lot of attention, opposition, support, and everything in between. And so we want to make sure that we did convene here last year prior to this contract going live. We did convene here. A number of great ideas came out of that convening. We split up into groups. We had great representation from across the city at that meeting. And we had the opportunity to really dialogue with one another and talk about ideas as it relates to the future of Fair Park. And there have been a number of meetings since that time. We know that Fair Park is a valuable asset, not only for District 7, but for the entire city of Dallas. And we want to make sure that we are protecting the assets. We know that there are decades of history as it relates to Fair Park, negative and positive. But that we want to make sure that we are working with the surrounding neighborhoods, and we know that we have an opportunity to deal with some of the history that has happened in the past. And so there are a couple of things that I have introduced at the council level, and just to give some history, I'm sure most of you here have the history as I look around this room, but the history is such that the mayor convened a task force. They met for a year, and then the task force plan went to the park board. The park board sent it to the city council with some additional recommendations, and then it came to the it came to the council for briefing. And prior to it coming to the council for briefing and prior to the contract going to the park board, we also had an evening council meeting here at Fair Park where we took public comment. There were over 100 speakers. We had about 4 that were in opposition. Everyone else was in support of the public-private partnership. And there have been a number of community meetings. I've had the opportunity to sit down with neighborhood associations and other entities throughout District 7 to talk with them about the future of Fair Park and what they would like to see. One of the key things and the key themes that I consistently hear about is the need for the creation of jobs. So that is something that we are looking at, and we know that Fair Park cannot do that alone, and neither can a foundation do that. That we are talking about a management agreement for a foundation to come in and manage Fair Park. And so we know there are a number of issues that we are dealing with here in South Dallas. District 7 does stretch from Pleasant Grove to Joppa and catch areas in between all the way out to Far East Dallas, Buckner Terrace, Dolphin Heights. We have just a number of neighborhoods that encompass District 7, but certainly as we look at the South Dallas Fair Park area, that we have some concerns that need to be addressed. And we have recently voted to approve the first ever public improvement district south of the Trinity, and that is the South Dallas Fair Park PID. And so that is a start, and as I always say, it's but a tool in the toolbox as we continue to talk about the need for more economic development and the need for additional resources throughout the Fair Park South Dallas area. So there are a couple of ideas that I introduced that I'll talk about before we have our 2 presentations. And one of the other things outside of the need for jobs that I've heard is the need that we don't repeat 1969, where the city and State Fair of Texas came into the community and took some land, and there are still some wounds as a result of that. And so in actually the 80s, there was an ordinance that was put on the books that says there must be a public hearing before Fair Park can encroach further into the community. And so what I have asked my colleagues to do, and I'm working on strengthening that ordinance in terms of adding some language to it that were required to go to the park board and to the council, which would really give the community input into that process, so that if someone wanted to further expand their footprint, whether that's the foundation, whether that's an institution inside of Fair Park, that the community has those protections put in place. And so I think there's a couple of ways we can strengthen that ordinance, and I've asked the council to support me in strengthening that ordinance. Also, I have been working with city staff. One of the other recurring things that I keep hearing about from some folks that have planted it in the atmosphere about gentrification. And so we want to deal with that as well. And so there is something that they have done in Austin that is called the Homestead Preservation District. And so we are looking at that at South Dallas Fair Park being the first homestead preservation district in Texas, and we'll have to work with the state, and there's funding there as I understand it. And so I'm working with city staff, and it really helps to protect property owners and their home values as it relates to prices going out and possibly pricing people out of their homes. So we want to make sure we deal with that, particularly as it relates to our seniors in our community. We will also here tonight, so let me just talk back, let me go back to where we are as a council. After the briefing, the mayor appointed a 3-person council member task force. Myself, Councilman Adam Magoo, and Mayor Pro Tem Monica Alonzo are in the process of talking with our colleagues, of meeting with city staff, city attorneys, and then working with the foundation and their attorneys to make sure that we have a contract that council members hopefully will support, that the community will support. We've heard a number of issues that are out there. Council members also talked about a number of issues that they have, and so we are working through the contract to see what we can do to address those issues. So before we bring up our 2 presenters, we have, as I already said, John Jenkins from Park and Recreation Department, and then we also have Walt Heumann representing the Fair Park Foundation. And let me just lay some ground rules that we want to be respectful of everyone that's at the microphone tonight. We do have our fine men and women right now in blue, our Dallas Police Department. Let me say thank you all for all of the work that you do in our communities and helping to keep us safe every day. We thank you. They are representing the Southeast Department, which serves us here in District 7. So we say thank you. No, they didn't send Southeast? Okay. Well, we say thank you for coming to the Southeast Department and joining us tonight. But we want to make sure that we are respectful of speakers, we are respectful of each other in this space, and if we are not being respectful, that we will reserve the right to deal with the situation. And so if you have questions, there are some cards that have been passed out, and we want to make sure we get your questions. And we hope that everyone has signed in tonight, and without further ado, I will bring up Mr. Jenkins. And I think he's passed out handouts of his presentation. If you don't have one, we have some out at the desk outside.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman Young. Let's see how. As Councilwoman Young mentioned earlier, I'm John Jenkins. I'm the Deputy Director with the Parks and Recreation Department. Willis Winters, who's the Director for the Parks Department, could not be here tonight because he has another presentation at another location tonight as well. But some of you all, I see a lot of familiar faces. Since we started this process back in September of 2014, I've seen many of you all at some of the community meetings, at the meeting we held out here at Fair Park, and I've seen plenty of you all at the Park and Recreation Board meetings over the last couple of years as well. So, but I'm here tonight to present the proposed management agreement recommendations that was approved by the Park and Recreation Board that has now been referred over to the Dallas City Council for consideration. And so, as I mentioned, my presentation will only be from the standpoint of what the Park and Recreation Board has approved for the council consideration. Okay, as Councilwoman Young mentioned, you have the handout And I'm just going to walk you through the proposed management agreement. I won't go line by line, but I will hit based on the high points so I can leave enough time as well for the foundation, for Walt Human to present as well. Okay? All right. If you just go to page 2, it's just some background information. Just basically letting you know, basic Fair Park. It is a jewel, 277 acres. If you didn't know, it is a designated National Historic Landmark. It received that designation in 1986. And as you know, it hosts many different institutions out here. Move on to page 3. The Mayor's Fair Park Task Force. Just basically in 2013, the mayor appointed the Mayor's Fair Park Task Force. And basically their charge was examining the future of Fair Park, capitalizing on the many strengths of Fair Park, enabling Fair Park to reach its full potential, and making recommendations that would address long-standing challenges and realize real improvements. There was also, the recommendation would address inadequate funding, absence of green space, lack of cohesive governing and marketing body, misconceptions regarding park safety. One of the other tasks was they wanted to create a park for all the people. And at that time, there was a joint session with the City Council and Park and Recreation Board on September 3rd, 2014, as I mentioned earlier. And what came out of the recommendation was enhanced access and connectivity with community and city. Establish a community park on south side of Fair Park. Empower new nonprofit organization as operational and marketing authority for Fair Park. I'm not going to go through all these dates. As I mentioned earlier, we started this process in September 2014. Some of the most recent activities on page 6. The Park and Recreation Board considered this item through April through August 2016. As I mentioned earlier, they approved the proposed management agreement on August the 4th. And on August 29th, we presented the recommendation to the City Council. Okay, the public-private partnership. Just to kind of outline what is the purpose of the public-private partnership as far as the management agreement. Basically, sufficient for the operation of the park to increase staffing in areas of marketing, events, and programming. I won't go into all these details. One of the other objectives, leverage private and public dollars for park enhancements and improvements. And we'll move on to the specific deal points. All right. Recommendations. City of Dallas to contract with Fair Park Texas Foundation for the management, maintenance, operation, and marketing of Fair Park. Want to make sure everybody understands, Fair Park will continue to be an asset owned by the City of Dallas, and it will be managed by the foundation. The city will pay an annual management fee to the foundation to fully support Fair Park as a public park, maintaining and managing the grounds and facilities as a vibrant year-round location for events, daily activities, cultural enrichment, and a place for quiet enjoyment. Continue with the purpose and term. One of the things that was very important to the park board, they wanted to establish performance objectives. So it says foundation will pursue certain performance objectives, creation and maintenance of a community park, support and enhancement of Fair Park as a National Historic Landmark, maintenance and enhancement of the various cultural institutions, maintenance and enhancement of the sporting and recreational venues. This is for a term of 20 years, beginning on January 1st, 2017 as the commencement date, for 2 consecutive 5-year renewal options. Okay, moving on to management fee and other fiscal matters. The city would pay the foundation an annual management fee, as I stated, for those objectives, to continue to maintain and operate Fair Park. The first year for 16-17 is prorated. They will receive $12.5 million as far as a management fee. Our current budget here at Fair Park is about a little over $12 million when you combine all the other institutions out here like EBS, the cultural institutions. Okay, but then in 2017-18, that management fee would go to 18.7, and then in 2018-19, it would go to 20.7. Okay, all right, we'll move on to page 12. Okay, as it relates to bond funding, subject to City Council approval, we'll seek voter consideration to authorize bond funds for certain Fair Park capital projects. And so, in the proposed 2017 bond program, the city will request the voters, for the voters' approval, for the 2017 $75 million, and the foundation would match $50 million in private funding. For the proposed second bond program, the city would ask you, the voters, to approve $50 million, and the foundation would have a 1-1 match, and they would raise an additional $50 million. Okay? Page 13. Another very important component of the Park and Recreation Board was the management and operation. In particular, they wanted to make sure that, that they have a governing board. It's governed by a 9-member board of directors. In particular, they wanted to make sure that at least one member shall be from and represent the surrounding Fair Park community, and at least one member shall be from and represent the historic preservation community. And once again, we just want to reiterate, as is mentioned in the contract as well, Fair Park will be used solely for park purposes. And if you're not familiar with state law, our parks can only be used for park use. Anything outside of park use, the state law has to be changed. That's the current law. So this will have to be used for park purpose that we have defined: recreation, culture, sports, entertainment, education with a recreational cultural component. Okay. Page 14. Another component that the park board was very adamant on was about the performance plan. They wanted to make sure there was a performance plan with performance indicators. And basically those indicators included the number of visitors, the number of events, operating revenues, capital expenditures, contributions from the city and non-city sources, contributions from for the signature park, signature community park, amount of green space created, and the foundation progress in meeting the city's bid program, which is basically the bid plan, which is basically MWBE, Minorities, Women, and Business Inclusion. So they would, when they come and report to the board on an annual basis, they would be responsible for reporting how are they succeeding or progressing as it relates to minority participation out here at Fair Park. Page 15. The foundation shall provide to the Park and Recreation Board reports on activities at Fair Park. For the first 2 years, they want the foundation to come in no less than quarterly. We don't have this requirement with any other partners, but they felt like it was very important that they get regular progress as relates to far as the progress out here. Beginning in 2020, then they would have them report like our regular partners coming in on an annual basis. And they took it a step further. If the foundation fails to meet any performance indicator in the performance plan by deviation of 10% or more, then they will be responsible for hiring an outside consultant with the Park and Recreation Director approval, and they will have to implement a remediation plan. Page 16, as far as personnel, once again, another requirement, Park Board wanted to make sure, hey, that the current staff has the opportunity to continue to work out here at Fair Park. And this was very important to the board.
All right.
All right, and then we'll move on to page 17. Management and operation. And so basically, as we talk about public relations, marketing, promotion, advertising, fundraising, Basically, the foundation shall have exclusive authority for all public relations, marketing, promotions, advertising. Foundation has exclusive right to plan, design, implement, and manage all fundraising efforts, including donor recognition and donor benefits. And name and sponsorship basically gives them the same authority, no different than what we have with the Arboretum, the Dallas Zoo, and pretty much all our partners. Because we want to give them the opportunity to raise the funds to put back into the operation of the park. Page 18, as far as maintenance, alterations, and construction. In particular, I want to point to the third bullet again. All foundation contracts related to said activities shall require the contractor to use good faith efforts to comply with the city's bid plan. Those who just walked in the room, the bid plan is basically the MWBE program to make sure there is minority participation as it relates to any type of construction work, goods, or services. And then if any plans or specification that exceed $100,000 will require the Park and Recreation Director to approve those plans. Page 19 is the community park. And once again, this was very important to the Park and Recreation Board. They wanted to make sure that during the first year of the term of this agreement, the foundation would undertake a conceptual design for a signature community park. And then they took it a step further. As you look at the last bullet, they want to, well, let's look at the second one. They want to make sure this public park is free of charge on a year-round basis, including during the annual State Fair of Texas. And the last bullet, the foundation shall commence construction of the signature community park within 24 months of funding becoming available. So once they're able to raise the money, they would like for the foundation to begin right away as far as constructing that park. As far as revenues opportunities, once again, no different than any of our other partners. We allow them to keep the revenues as long as those revenues go back into the park for improvements. That's what's required. Okay, and moving on to page 21. The board wanted to make sure they submit an annual operating budget to the park department, which the director would review. They want to make sure each quarter they want to at least see an unaudited financial statement, and which is different than our other partners, but what's similar to the other partners is that all our partners have to submit at least a once a year certified financial audit. Okay, as far as defaults and remedies and reversion, and basically it just says that the city could terminate this contract as long as we give the foundation for default, as long as we give the foundation 90 days, no more than 180 days of notice. Same for the foundation, they would need to give us notice as well. If the city does not, city and foundation have the right to terminate for non-appropriation of management fee, and the foundation has the right to terminate for bonding election is unsuccessful, and the city is unable to secure alternative funding to at least give us 4 years to see if we can come up with an alternate source. And that completes my presentation, and I don't see Councilwoman Young, but I might ask Walt Human if he will come up there and present Forrester. Present to the council. Thank you all.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Tiffany, for inviting me and giving the foundation a chance to explain what we're trying to do. I'd like to ask you to go back to the year 2001, 15 years ago. I had the privilege of serving as chair of the science place. And during that time, as Dr. Harry Robinson worked together, we just finished up in the late 1990s the first and only new project expansion in the entire Fair Park area in the last 3 decades prior to that. We came up with $25 million to build the IMAX theater and extend that section over toward the band shell. Go there now, the building is totally abandoned, and it kills me to see that. At that time in 2001, I asked for a meeting of the City Council and members of the Fair Park and the Park Board. And I had 3 strong recommendations. 1, your management structure in Fair Park is all screwed up. Number 2, you were woefully underfunding Fair Park, including things that influence the science place. 3rd, you have no marketing and communication for overall Fair Park. Made the presentation, nothing happened. 2 years later, the 2003 Hargraves Community Comprehensive Development Plan for overall Fair Park, 277 acres, was commissioned. This is an outstanding firm located in San Francisco. They had numerous public meetings, of which I participated in some of those, came to a consensus plan that is part and parcel of what we're referring to as a 2003 Hargraves plan. And it laid out a terrific conceptual roadmap for transforming Fair Park into a park that we would all be proud of. That plan was approved by the Park Board, it was approved by the City Council, and it was approved by the Landmark Commission. Now, it had what I would call general aspects in it, green this area, but it did not have specific projects. The other thing it did not have is, how are you going to pay to create this signature park? Nothing. So that was 2003. We're now at 2016. You just heard about the mayor's task force. And when the mayor asked me to take a look at the task force, I said that I'm really reluctant, because I was chairing the science place, and now we have nothing to show for it in all of Fair Park. Secondly, I was unsuccessful in convincing the then city mayor and city and county judge to sit down in the same room with the Dallas Cowboys to bring the Cowboy Stadium as a potential for Fair Park. I never got that meeting. To this date, to the best of my knowledge, the 3 of them and ourselves, who were volunteers, never had a face-to-face meeting. Well, there was a lot of discussion on the newspaper, about Jerry Jones making too much money here and this, that, and the other. But my point was, let the voters decide. And so about that time, after the 2001 presentation, in 1997, I got involved as a volunteer and was served as the founding chairman of the Jubilee Project, which is just immediately north to Fair Park. A wonderful community, but in decline, like many of the other communities in South Dallas and Fair Park area. And I'm very pleased to say that that is an activity in progress, but we have made some help. The very first thing that we did was create a community park right in the center of Jubilee Park. We set up task forces in education, anti-crime, health, employment, economic development, physical improvements. And the whole purpose of that was that you could not have a substantive improvement, at least from my perspective, unless you're going on all cylinders. You can't just come in and do a little narrow thing, or a bunch of volunteers come in and clean up an alley one Saturday and think that you've solved the problems. South Dallas is much more profound. So it is that background, when the mayor asked me to get involved, that I wanted to do an independent and be totally neutral, and that is where I am today. So I started investigating, and not only talking to the officials in Fair Park, but also talking to the maintenance crew that actually does the maintenance inside of Fair Park. So here's what I found. Not only have they not funded it properly, they have woefully underfunded Fair Park. They have treated this area as a step shop. Now, that's not, I can't blame this council, I can't blame the prior council. But if we built a building, or when we built the community center in Jubilee Park, we not only built the center, but we set up an endowment fund. Wouldn't it have been great in 1936, when we celebrated the bicentennial, if the city officials had set up an endowment fund, or if they'd said, the money that we're going to pump into Fair Park, we will escalate that with inflation. We probably wouldn't be talking here if they had done that, but they didn't. So let me just give you one specific example of what I found in this independent due diligence study. We have in Fair Park 1,700,000 square feet of buildings under roof. Old buildings. Some are historical treasures. Others are not, but they're being used. If you go to BOMA, which is Business Owners and Managers Association, and ask them how much does it cost on the average to maintain a square foot of building that is in pretty good shape, and they would tell you the amount is between $8 and $10 a square foot. If you multiply that number, just to maintain adequately maintained buildings costs you on the average about $15 to $16 million a year. This year, 2016, City Council has provided $7.8 million, almost half of what it really requires just to maintain buildings. That's not talking about the lagoon or the fountains or the roads, and that's certainly not talking about doing anything new. So one of my biggest complaints is, because Fair Park has been underfunded and has such a poor management structure, and I'll get back to that in a minute, no new money has come into Fair Park, to the best of my knowledge, except what the State Fair did in the Midway. No new money for new projects, for greening, for some of the other things. None has come in. And why is that? Why would an investor want to get into a community when the city is not backing it? So here's what we're recommending as a foundation. Number one, streamline management in Fair Park. Number two, adequately fund Fair Park. Now let me fill in the details. In the management, right now, and I kid the mayor, that you've got about 50 or 60 people or organizations that are running Fair Park. In the old days with the science place, when they'd have a bond election, we'd get the word maybe 3 or 4 days before they were going to finalize it, and all the different institutions would scurry around. I need $1 million here, you need $1 million there, what about the streets and so forth? There wasn't one party going down to the city council with everyone behind that party saying, this is what we need for Fair Park. No, we had 15, 20, 30 people all doing their own thing and acting independently. And you know how much money Fair Park got? Zero. If you have a team where you have no quarterback, you're not going to get across the goal line. So there's an operating funding deficiency and there's a capital funding deficiency. And if that can be turned around, we have a fighting chance of getting that new money to come back in for the new project, which is the most important thing. On the unifying management, right now, you've got 15 council, 15 park board, you've got staff, you've got about 12 institutions out here like the Music Hall, the State Fair, the Texas Discovery Garden, each of them have an independent, no-cut contract that lasts for years. So, what was suggested, and this is in the proposal for the foundation, we created a 9-person board, and when I visited with the council in November, this was the pledge I made. We'd have 3 African American, 3 Hispanic, and 3 Anglo on that board for the first time, having the minority community being in the majority representation because they had not been involved in any of the main key decision-making in Fair Park. But in addition to the ground rule that John just mentioned about 1 person being from the community and 1 person being from the historical preservation community, we were fortunate enough to attract 2 individuals on that board, on the foundation board. But that wasn't good enough as far as I was concerned, because we have wonderful leaders in this community, like Anna Hill, whom I saw just a few minutes earlier, and Alandra Lyons and others, and Ben Leal in the Jubilee Park area, and Omidia Amaya. And what about them? And so we created an advisory board for specific expertise around the surrounding area, added 2 more individuals from the historic reservation community, and then added representatives from some of the other organizations in Fair Park, as well as people that could bring insight to the table. Third, what we did was propose that we organize those independent 12 institutions out here into what I call the Fair Park Leadership Council. And so what I'd like to do, and this is what I've mentioned to them when I've visited with their boards, if we are fortunate enough to have the council approve this and you endorse it, then what I'm asking each of those people to do is take off your State Fair hat, take off your Music Hall hat, and put on your Fair Park hat. And then put a sign here, I'm from Music Hall, I'm from State Fair. But think first, last, and always about Fair Park, because if Fair Park doesn't thrive and expand, they're going to have a hard time long term. Really a long time. So that's the management organization. I think it's been pretty well received, but that is only the start. Now let's talk about the finance. What I mentioned just a few minutes ago about operating and maintenance budget, 15 million should be, but only 7 to 8 million is what they're providing. That's just operation and maintenance. What about the subsidies that are being paid to the institutions that exist out here? 1.6 million in 2016. What about the other landscaping and improvements in Fair Park that are not part of those buildings? What about new things? Getting on board a marketing and communication person. What about getting a planning person that can help create a master plan to transform all 277 acres into a signature community park that we can all be proud of and help prioritize those new projects. Remember the term, new projects. And in our presentation to the park board, I was very pleased when everyone took to heart my suggestion that we create a neighborhood park right between Gillum Boulevard, 2nd Avenue, Grand Avenue, and MLK. That's just a start. That's just the first project, but people were so enthusiastic about that, they said, make that your #1 priority. And we said, in that long list of master plan projects, of new projects, that would be your #1. Now, John mentioned this, it's called the Needs Assessment Inventory. Now, what that means is that once a year or 2 years, the park board commissions people to analyze all the assets that they have, and they do this citywide. So when I became involved, I asked the staff, give me the plans that you've got that show the conditions of these buildings out here. And I was given two plans. One said 103 million, but that only dealt with half the buildings. The other plan was 494 million, and that was everything but the kitchen sink in it, a lot of wish list items, so forth. So right out here at Fair Park, I asked for a meeting in January, and we got all the resident institutions, the staff together, and said, blend these two and update it to 2016. And then what the park department did was they engaged a firm named AECom, and here's what I asked them to do. Take all of those needs assessment and prioritize them, because you can't do everything overnight, especially if the city is not providing any money. And so here are the four priorities. Number one, security, safety, ADA, or if you don't repair it, you're going to destroy priceless objects. That's one. Number two, you better spend it now, or you're going to spend a ton of money later on. Example, if you don't replace the roof and the ceiling falls in, then it's not just a matter of replacing a roof, you've got to spend a lot more money. That's two. Number three, you're going to lose customers if you don't do these repairs. Like, if you go into a bad restroom, and your family's there, you're probably not going to want to come back to Fair Park. And there are a lot of other instances like that. And then the final and the fourth and the lowest priority is existing institutions, existing buildings and so forth. What can we do to them to bring more customers back in? For example, like the band shell. It sits there, but if you walk up the steps, you'll find the steps are literally broken off. And in the hot summertime, when my wife and I, when we were dating, we went to the Starlight musicals out there. And when the soprano swallowed one of those crickets, and she said, I'm never coming back to Fair Park again. But that's what we dealt with. In the old days, you know, we could accommodate the lack of air conditioning and so forth. But maybe we can do something, gee whiz. That is such a beautiful facility, and certainly in the spring and the summertime, and maybe partly in the wintertime. So that's what I refer to as the fourth priority, how do we attract new people in? Now, unfortunately, and I'll take blame for this, haven't done a good job in explaining it. Because people confuse the fact that here's this needs inventory prepared by the park department, and that comes to $232 million. The first priority is 32 million. That's that first priority. Second priority is about 50. Third priority is 92 million. So this is not just little money, it's big money. But the confusion is the foundation is not about just simply fixing up old buildings. That's not going to attract a lot of new people. But if you don't fix some of those historical buildings, it's part of the whole mindset and the aura of Fair Park. And that why would donors want to invest new money if you're not even taking care of what you should have taken care of since 1932? So all we're seeking is to follow. Give us a chance to manage and streamline the management. So in effect, we have one voice, and I got to stop and say this. Wouldn't it have been great if we'd had a foundation 30 or 40 years ago when the Museum of Art was thinking about leaving Fair Park and going downtown, or the symphony, or the opera, or now the science place? We didn't have someone pounding the table at the council and with those groups and saying, hey, we can better this, we can do this and that and the other, right in this area. This is where you should stay. Well, we didn't. We didn't have our act together. We didn't have a single party basically pounding the table, asking, pleading, advertising, marketing that Fair Park is the place to be. We're in a different environment in 2016. If we think that there are legions of people that want to come and throw hundreds of millions of dollars in Fair Park and put events on here with Jerry World in Arlington, with Irving, New Convention Center, with Frisco, and those other, we are in a competition mode. So we better get our act together. We better get the financing that we need, and we better get the organizational structure. And then with that, take this first year and develop a master plan, and then collectively, the general public and these experts like landscape architects and so forth, lay out the specifics on those new projects that will turn this park around and make everyone proud. And oh, by the way, the very first project among those new projects is the neighborhood park, approximately 8 acres, 70% larger than Clyde Warren Park, and as has been referred to, not particularly encouraging, is that it's only a postage stamp park. And as I mentioned to the city council the other day, I ran a quick calculation as an engineer, it'll be 50 million times larger than a 1-inch square postage stamp. So let's get on it. Let's do a conceptual plan in this first year. Let's get a total master plan for Fair Park to lay out the new projects, and then work our tails off to get new money in here. But as the foundations have consistently said, they are not going to fund Fair Park unless there is a substantive show that the city backs Fair Park. And a final footnote. When I chaired the science place and we raised the 25 million, the chairman of TI, Jerry Junkin, and the chairman of EDS asked me the following question. This was in the 1996 time period. Where is the city of Dallas in funding Fair Park? Fortunately, they didn't ask the question too hard, and they put up most of the money that we needed. But I don't want people, when we start on this neighborhood park, the price tag of which is maybe approximately $40 million, because the park board edicted that all those 600 plus parking places that you would eliminate and put green there and a world-class park, they have to be put underground. So what we've tentatively looked at is maybe a 650 slot parking garage underneath that area right there. To green the park, everyone wants to green the park. And we want to turn every effort to maximize the green in the park. But we do have parking needs. And I think the music hall and some of the others would probably be upset if we magically said there isn't any more parking here. But some of that parking could be dual use. You could tear up the asphalt of the country and plant resistant grass. And if they only use that parking lot for maybe a couple of weeks of the year, wouldn't that be a good dual use? And then you kind of repair it. There are other things, like I talked with the Cowboys about. What they do there, they bring up a carpet that's used for the professional football. And then they store that, bring up another carpet that they use for professional soccer. And then they roll it up. I don't know if that works, probably too expensive, but taking a 1 acre piece of concrete with rebar steel in it and converting that acre to just green grass area with drainage and with irrigation is about $500,000. So let's say we want to green 80 acres of the existing parking lots, and we magically do something about parking, and we can. That's a $40 million price tag right there. So it doesn't come easy. It's wonderful to say, let's do it. But as all those previous master plans have presented, they didn't say anything about financing. So appreciate all the support you get. We need it on this thing. Believe me, I don't have a specific plan. Everything that I've ever done with the desegregation plan and creating the magnet schools, DART, the Central Expressway, Jubilee Park, it's all been done by consensus. We didn't begin that park over there in Jubilee Park just on our own. We had a design charrette. We had got people in the community. And that's when the community mom said, listen, we want this park, but I want it to be safe, so I don't mind sending my children to the park. And so I said, well, we got to really do something about the crime, because that was one of the highest crime zip codes in Dallas when we took over, and basically it's one of the lowest today. And I might also say that so is inside Fair Park. There are myths out there from the people who are competing with us or want to hurt us, and the myth is Fair Park is dangerous. It's not. It's one of the most, it's safer than a couple of key North Park areas. Number two, it's inaccessible. Can you believe that? We got I-30, I-45, and not one but two DART stations. And now with the new technology, we may be able to better utilize existing parking places where we don't need all those. Number three, it's dirty. These are people who haven't visited Fair Park in decades, or they may have visited during the non-state fair time period where we don't have enough maintenance crew to really keep it clean. Number four, the neighborhoods are bad. Have anybody seen what's happening in Mill City and Dolphin Heights and Jubilee Park? Please, when you leave here, drive by there or just go to Bank Street in Gurley tonight, because we're going to have a dedication of the expanded park here in Jubilee Park. See what can be done if we work together as a team. And in that particular case, it's primarily private money. So, sorry for the long monologue. I appreciate the opportunity. Tiffany, I don't know what your ground rules are. We're glad to, I think you're going to break up in sections, and we're glad to visit further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Human, for your presentations. One of the things that I heard very loudly and clearly in the last 3 to 4 weeks in the Facebook post, the Twitter post, is that people felt like the community had not been included. This information had not come to the community. So I wanted to make sure that we got before the community to present this information, one, and then two, to take comments and questions. And so as you were coming in, you received a question card, you received a comment card. Before we get to that, let me also correct myself. It is indeed not the Southeast Police Station that is represented tonight. It is our Central Division that is represented tonight. So thank you all for being here. Also, Councilman Adam Magoo from District 10 has joined us. He's there at the back of the room. Thank you for joining us tonight. He does serve on the negotiation committee with myself and Mayor Pro Tem Alonzo. And then also I've seen other city staff, and our community court judge Williams is here tonight. Thank you for joining us as well. Some of the things that came up when the council had conversation when we were briefed last week on the signature community, on the Fair Park, on the Fair Park, the future of Fair Park. Some of the things that came up that we are dealing with as we negotiate the contract is that of what was formerly being called a community park that is now being called a neighborhood park. The situation, who serves on the board, that's something that we are discussing. The idea of including the MWBE, which I think it was mentioned at the council meeting that is included, dealing with the expenditures, transparency issues. And so these are kind of some of the general themes that we are dealing with as a council that we will be working together on. There were issues of the expansion of Fair Park that I already mentioned, the advisory board, which is different than the board, the performance plan, what are the metrics, how is this foundation going to be, their performance, how will it be measured? And so that's something that we are currently, talking about amongst ourselves as a council to better understand that. And so I think, does everyone have a question and comment card? What we are going to do, we've presented a lot of information tonight. We will also be placing the links on the City of Dallas District 7 Council page where you can go and view this in your own time. I think many of you have already viewed the contract, but the contract and the presentation will be there for you all to view and look and continue to submit questions and comments. We've asked for your districts and we've asked for you to write them down so that we can share them with our colleagues and definitely get them to the particular council district that you live in to make sure. So we will have them in District 7, but we also want to make sure that your council member has your concerns as well, as I'm sure many of you may have already shared them with them. I am hopeful. It was my intention to talk with District 7 constituents tonight, and I am hopeful that my colleagues will host meetings in their respective districts as well to hear from their constituents. And so to that tune, if you will please write your questions and comments down on these cards. What we're going to do is to split up into groups so that you can ask your questions of us. Mr. Human is availing himself to questions. I'm availing myself to questions, as is Mr. Jenkins. We have stations set up outside. We also have city staff to take notes so that we are recording those questions and we will answer those questions. And so we welcome you to join us just outside. The stations are set up. Mr. Human will be in this room here to our left. I will be right outside of that room, and Mr. Jenkins will be right here in the area that you signed in. And if you do not choose to stay, would you please leave us a comment whether or not you support or oppose the Fair Park Foundation partnering with the City of Dallas. We do want to get that on record. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, the comment cards are not handed out. We just received questions. So
You can write them on there as well.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Filled it up with questions, so they need another one.
Okay, we have some more outside.
thank you.
We have more cards available. Absolutely. Thank you.
This is William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below or like, follow, or subscribe to us and get notices of all our videos. We love it, even when you call.